The 2021 college football season is upon us. Alabama kicks off in a little bit around 2 hours from now. And I'm a little freaked out. I'm a little worried about my beloved Crimson Tide today. I've always had a worry that Saban's slide would begin as emphatically as his ascension back in 2008 in one of these opening games in Atlanta, again, just like 2008, against an ACC opponent, just like 2008, Miami, a team whose dominant decade we ended way back in 1992, just to add a little bit of symmetry and a little bit of woo to the whole thing, if you like. And so I'm a little worried. And also, I'm worried because we're depending on our defense again all of a sudden. 5 years ago, I would have been ecstatic about that, but the game has changed so much since then. Defense no longer wins championships. You can't say that anymore like it used to. Offense wins championships now. And that's bad news for the Crimson Tide because we lost one of the best ones that college football's ever seen. I mean, Devontae Smith, arguably the greatest player in Crimson Tide history. Najee Harris, arguably in the top 5 all-time running backs at Alabama, and that's saying a lot at Alabama. And then you got Mac, who's arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, we didn't get enough of a sample size. That's the only argument you could make against him being the greatest quarterback in Alabama history. So, you've lost an all-time offense in an era where offense wins championships and people are excited about the defense again. And like I said, I'm a defensive guy. I hate the fact that defense no longer wins championships. Give me a nice 13-3 victory over a 52-28 any day of the week. I love those kind of games. I'm an old school SEC, 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. So I would love to see that, but I don't buy it. I don't buy that Alabama's just going to be able to flip the switch again and, suddenly come out and start holding teams to less than 10 points a game and dominating games that way. They might be able to do it. Saban has, proven his detractors wrong more times than I can count. And that being said, we're in a new era of college football, and we got a new O coordinator, which I always think that's sort of an advantage, switching O coordinators every few years because they get stale. And it keeps us a little bit less predictable on offense, which is good. And there's a lot of different feelings going into this season. I mean, when's the last time you remember Saban transitioning to a new quarterback and us knowing that the quarterback was going to be the starter? I mean, we knew Bryce Young was going to be the starter at the end of the championship back in January. And I know they just officially named him the starter, but when has Saban ever named a new starter before kickoff? I mean, we found out who the starter was going to be when he went under center. That's the way it happened for Jalen. That's the way it happened for Tua. I mean, we didn't know between Tua and Jalen if he was going to make the transition or not until we saw it on the field. We didn't know. I mean, Coker didn't take over till after the Ole Miss game had started. I mean, that was when he won his job, and I think that was 3 games into the season. Anyway, just a lot of different atmospheres going. And then, maybe that's a good thing that we've known about Bryce Young. Maybe this is the first time Saban's actually been confident about a young quarterback enough to go ahead and make him his starter before the season actually began. Maybe that's a good thing. Or maybe Saban's slipping and getting old and resting on his laurels a little bit. We'll see. Miami, they've got I don't know a whole lot about them, but I do know that they've got a good mobile quarterback, and I know that is traditionally the kryptonite for Alabama. Plus, they've got a lot of old Alabama and Auburn staff members. Maybe not a lot. They've got at least 2 old Alabama and Auburn staff members, so they're going to have an intimate inside knowledge of Alabama's program. And the biggest worry of all is if Miami's able to pull off the stunner, then you're talking about a team that's in completely uncharted waters. You're talking about a team that hasn't lost an opener in 20 years. Alabama hasn't lost until November since 2015. I mean, that's incredible right there. So if they lose, if they stub their toe against Miami, because defenses, ever since the rule change where the O lineman can go 5 yards down the field before the quarterback throws, I mean, that is pretty much handicapped defenses. I don't care how talented they are not going to be able to slow down a decent offense with a good quarterback with the lineman being able to run that far downfield before they throw. Totally changed the game. Not a lot of people talk about what a huge, monumental paradigm shift that was in college football. That little rule change, big time. So now we're dealing with that. And, you got a team that's so confident. Everyone acts as though, that's another thing that worries me. Everyone acts as though it's just an impossibility that Alabama's going to lose more than 2 games. Like, if they lose 2 games, that's considered a collapse. Listen to what happens if they lose their first game. All of a sudden, that invincibility and all of the praise coming from the talking heads will completely switch. They will totally turn 180 and say the dynasty's over, Saban's too old. You watch one game. I mean, if it happens. And then all of a sudden, in 2 weeks, we got to play Florida, who, we had to gut check and man up just to hold them off last year with the greatest offense in Alabama history. And now we don't have that to lean on anymore. And so if they get hot, and Pete Golding, so finally Pete Golding has got the talent this year, and there won't be any more excuses for him. The defense hasn't looked the same since Pruitt left. I actually thought Pruitt probably had 1 or 2 of the best defenses, even over Smart's defenses at Alabama. But anyway, they haven't looked the same since then, since Pruitt left. Pete Golding has, they've been a bend but don't break defense for the last few years, which is just heartbreaking for any traditional Alabama fan, certainly me. So we got Pete Golding. Can he live up with no excuses now? He's got his linebackers, deep defensive line, good experienced backfield coming back. You got Jordan Battle, you got Job, Malachi Moore looks like a superstar. Brian Branch coming back there. No excuses for Golding anymore. And you got Florida. All of a sudden, you lose that one, then you're spiraling. And you got Southern Miss coming in, whatever, doesn't even matter, shouldn't even play that game. But then after that, you got Lane Kiffin coming in with Ole Miss, and he's nipping at his heels already. And if you got a team that's reeling already and in uncharted waters with 2 losses, all of a sudden that spirals. And then you've got the sleeping giant with Jimbo Fisher and the Texas A&M Aggies. Well, maybe they'll figure out how to not hit the snooze button this year when they play Alabama. But like I said, if Alabama's spiraling and reeling at that point, you never know. It could be Jimbo's year. And at that point, you've got a 2-4 start for Alabama. A 2-4 start is not out of the realm of possibilities for Alabama this year. Like I said, Miami's got a good, strong quarterback. They go in there, pull off the shocker. You got a reeling Alabama team in uncharted waters. Then they've got to turn right back around, and within the next 5 weeks, you've got Florida, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, the 3 arguably toughest conference games you're going to have that year. I know everybody's pointing towards LSU. I don't know why. Here's a little bonus analysis. That dumb gorilla, Ed Orgeron, is not going to bring them back to prominence. He was the beneficiary of the perfect storm when Burrow and Brady and all those receivers matured all at the same time, and he still had a pretty decent defense. Plus, he got a dinged-up Tua, which, helped him in that regard. And voila, you've got an all-timer, masterpiece of a team. And, he was the head coach, so you can't take that away from him. But don't expect to ever see anything close to that again. I feel like he's going to go the way of Gene Chizik. Because he's a big, dumb gorilla, and he doesn't have the perfect storm, to rely on every year. And so I just, maybe they don't collapse as hard as Chizik did in his last year, but I don't ever see them sniffing the SEC title again, as long as Orgeron is under the helm. or at the helm. I suppose that's all I've got to say about today. Bama fans, don't be surprised if your worst nightmares come true. But all that being said, this is Saban, and maybe he knows something about Bryce Young that nobody else does, and he really is that guy. And this is going to be the masterpiece of all masterpieces for Saban. You can never count that out either. This could be the greatest team in college football history, or they could be 2-4. Gotta love college football.